I slammed the door of Henderson's antique shop so hard the brass bell nearly launched itself into orbit. Another catastrophic Tinder date had just ended with my would-be Prince Charming suggesting we split the check after he spent 20 minutes explaining why pineapple belongs on pizza. Some battles aren't worth fighting, but apparently my dating life wasn't one of them either. The musty scent of old wood and forgotten memories wrapped around me like a familiar blanket. I needed retail therapy, and vintage jewelry had always been my weakness. Something about owning pieces with history made me feel less pathetic about my own historical disasters in romance. Marcus Chen looked up from behind the register, his knowing smile already forming. Rough night? Don't ask. I wandered deeper into the maze of antique furniture and glass cases, my heels clicking against worn hardwood floors. Somewhere between a Victorian writing desk and a collection of pocket watches, I spotted it in the jewelry case. A cameo brooch, with intricate ivory carving against deep blue stone, the kind of piece that demanded attention. That's when I saw her. She stood before an ornate mahogany sewing box, completely absorbed in examining the mother-of-pearl inlays that decorated its surface. Silver threads ran through her blonde hair like expensive silk, and her fingers moved with the precision of someone who understood craftsmanship. Even from across the narrow aisle, I could see the intensity in her blue eyes as she studied each detail. She had to be in her early 50s, but damn if she didn't carry herself with more grace than most women half her age. Her cream-colored blouse was perfectly tailored, probably custom work, and her dark slacks fit like they were made specifically for her body. Everything about her screamed quality and attention to detail. I found myself gravitating toward the jewelry case, but my eyes kept drifting to her. There was something magnetic about the way she moved, completely confident in her own skin. When she reached up to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, I noticed her hands. Strong, elegant, with just a hint of calluses that suggested she worked with those fingers. "Excuse me," I called to Marcus. "Could I see that cameo brooch?" The woman at the sewing box glanced up, and our eyes met for exactly 3 seconds. Long enough for me to notice the sharp intelligence behind those blue eyes, and the way her lips curved into the beginning of a smile before she looked away. Marcus unlocked the case and placed the brooch on a velvet cloth. The piece was even more beautiful up close, the carving depicting a woman's profile with delicate features and flowing hair. 1920s, Marcus explained. Estate sale from a mansion up in the hills. I was reaching for the brooch when another hand appeared in my peripheral vision. Slender fingers with perfectly manicured nails moved toward the same piece, and suddenly we were both touching it simultaneously. The contact lasted maybe 5 seconds, but it felt like the entire antique shop held its breath. Her fingers were warm, and I swear I felt something like electricity jump between us, not the cheesy romance novel kind, but something real and unexpected that made my pulse quicken. "Oh, I'm sorry," she said, pulling her hand back. Her voice had a slight rasp to it, like good whiskey or expensive cigarettes. "I didn't realize you were looking at it." "No problem at all." I managed to keep my voice steady, even though my heart was doing something resembling a tap dance. "It's gorgeous. Isn't it?" She leaned closer to examine the piece, and I caught a hint of her perfume. Something subtle and sophisticated, probably French. "The craftsmanship is exceptional. Look at how delicate the carving is, but the setting is still sturdy enough to last decades." She knew what she was talking about. This wasn't casual browsing. "Are you in the jewelry business?" I asked. Her smile was enigmatic. "I work with my hands. You could say I have an appreciation for fine craftsmanship." Before I could ask what that meant, she was walking back toward the sewing box, leaving me holding the brooch and wondering why I suddenly felt like I'd missed an important opportunity. Marcus cleared his throat. "So, the brooch?" I looked down at the cameo, then back at the mysterious woman who was now running her fingers along the edges of the sewing box with obvious expertise. "I'll take it," I said, but I wasn't really thinking about the jewelry anymore. 3 days later, I stood outside Timeless Alterations with my heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape. The brass nameplate gleamed in the afternoon sun, and through the window I could see bolts of fabric arranged like a rainbow against exposed brick walls. I'd searched every alteration shop in Reno after my disaster presentation suit incident. The jacket sleeves were too long, the pants needed hemming, and I had exactly 48 hours before the biggest client meeting of my career. Every other tailor had laughed at my timeline. Then Sophie Mitchell at the boutique downtown had whispered about Evelyn Russell like she was sharing classified information. She's expensive, but she's magic with fabric. If anyone can save you, it's Evelyn. The bell chimed as I pushed open the door, and there she was. The woman from the antique shop stood behind a cutting table, her blonde hair pulled back in a neat chignon, wearing a black dress that probably cost more than my rent. She looked up from the silk she was pinning, and those blue eyes widened with recognition. "Well," she said, setting down her pins. "The cameo brooch buyer. Evelyn Russell?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Guilty." She moved around the table with fluid grace. "And you need alterations on a timeline that would make most tailors weep. Sophie told you?" "Sophie tells me everything." Evelyn's smile held secrets. "She also mentioned you work in marketing. Corporate climb, high-pressure meetings, the works." I nodded, suddenly self-conscious under her appraising gaze. She was studying me like fabric she was considering purchasing. "Show me the damage." I unzipped the garment bag with trembling fingers, revealing my charcoal gray suit. Evelyn lifted the jacket, examining the construction with professional intensity. "Good quality wool, decent tailoring, but completely wrong for your frame." She held it up against me, her knuckles brushing my collarbone. "You're petite but curvy. This cut makes you disappear. Can you fix it?" "I can make it sing." She moved behind me, gathering excess fabric at the waist. "But I'll need measurements, and I work late when I'm under deadline. You comfortable with that?" The rational part of my brain said this was just business. The other part was already imagining spending evening hours in this intimate space with her. Whatever it takes. She led me to a raised platform in front of a three-way mirror, the kind that shows you every angle whether you want to see it or not. "Strip down to your underwear." My cheeks burned. "Excuse me?" "I need to see your actual body to make this work properly." Her tone was purely professional, but something in her eyes made my pulse quicken. "I've been doing this for 30 years. I've seen everything." I hesitated for exactly 3 seconds before unbuttoning my blouse. If this was what it took to save my presentation, fine. I slipped out of my clothes with as much dignity as I could manage, standing in my black lace bra and matching panties. Evelyn circled me like a sculptor examining marble, her gaze clinical but somehow intimate. "Beautiful lines," she murmured, and I wasn't sure if she meant my body or something else. She knelt to pin the pants hem, her fingers brushing my ankle as she worked. Each touch was professional, necessary, but it felt like electric current running through my skin. "You have excellent posture," she said, standing to adjust the jacket shoulders. "Most people carry tension here." Her hands settled on my shoulders, thumbs pressing gently against the muscle. "You don't." "Yoga," I managed. "Smart woman." She stepped back to examine her work. "This will look stunning on you. The men in your meeting won't know what hit them." Something about the way she said it made me wonder if she was thinking about more than just professional success. We worked until nearly midnight, with Evelyn's sewing machine humming in the background, while she made precise adjustments. I sat on her leather sofa, watching her work by lamplight. There was something hypnotic about her concentration, the way her fingers moved with absolute certainty. "Tell me about the antique shop," I said during a break. "Do you collect sewing boxes?" "I collect beautiful craftsmanship." She looked up from her work. "That sewing box was made in 1890 by a master carpenter in Boston. The joinery work alone took months." "Did you buy it?" Her smile was mysterious. "I'm still deciding. Sometimes the most precious things are worth waiting for." The way she said it made me wonder if we were still talking about furniture. When she finished the final adjustments, she insisted I try everything on once more. The transformation was remarkable. The suit hugged my body in all the right places, making me look powerful and feminine simultaneously. "Perfect," Evelyn said, standing behind me in the mirror. Her reflection met my eyes, and for a moment we just looked at each other. Her hands rested lightly on my shoulders, and I could feel the warmth of her body behind mine. "Thank you," I whispered. She leaned closer, her lips near my ear. "You're going to destroy them tomorrow." Then, so quickly I might have imagined it, she pressed a soft kiss to my temple. The presentation was flawless. I landed the Morrison account, and a promotion that came with a corner office and a salary that finally matched my ambitions. But all I could think about was the way Evelyn's lips had felt against my temple, softer than silk and warmer than the Nevada sun. I found excuses to return to her shop over the next 2 weeks, a skirt that supposedly needed taking in, a blouse with buttons that were perfectly fine but I claimed felt loose. Each visit stretched longer than necessary, with conversations that danced around everything except what was really happening between us. "You know," Evelyn said on my 4th visit, pins between her lips as she marked a hem that definitely didn't need adjusting. Most women would consider this stalking. Heat flooded my cheeks. "I'm not stalking. I'm a satisfied customer with particular standards." She removed the pins, her smile wicked. Particular standards for what, exactly? The question hung in the air like expensive perfume. We both knew this wasn't about alterations anymore, but neither of us was brave enough to say it. Instead, Evelyn disappeared into her back room and returned with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. "It's after 6. I'm officially closed. I should probably go." "Should you?" She poured deep red wine into both glasses, her movements elegant and practiced. "Or do you want to stay and tell me what's really bringing you back here?" I accepted the wine, our fingers brushing during the handoff. That same electric current I'd felt at the antique shop sparked between us, impossible to ignore. "Your work is exceptional," I said weakly. "My work is good. But that's not why you're here." She settled onto the leather sofa beside me, close enough that I caught her subtle perfume. "I've been doing this long enough to know when a woman is interested in more than thread count." The wine made me bold, or maybe it was the way she was looking at me, like I was something precious she wanted to unwrap slowly. "What makes you think I'm interested in anything beyond professional services?" Her laugh was rich and knowing. "Because you've been undressing me with your eyes since you walked in here the first time, and because you get this little flush right here when I touch you." She reached out and traced a finger along my collarbone, exactly where the flush was spreading. "Like you're doing right now." My breath caught. "Evelyn. I'm 52 years old, Clara. I've learned not to waste time pretending when something real is happening." "How did you know my name?" "Sophie told me. Along with your address, your job title, and the fact that you've been asking questions about me at every boutique in town." Damn Sophie and her gossipy mouth. I wasn't asking questions. "Really?" Evelyn moved closer, her thigh brushing against mine. "So you didn't ask Marcus at the antique shop about my relationship status, or confirm with 3 different shop owners that I live alone?" I was caught, and we both knew it. The wine had loosened something inside me, making honesty feel safer than deflection. Maybe I was curious. Curious about what? About you. About why a woman who can afford to dress like you do spends her evenings alone in a tailor shop. About whether that sadness I see sometimes in your eyes is something I could help with. Something shifted in her expression, vulnerability replacing the playful confidence. "You see too much. Or maybe you don't hide as well as you think you do." She set down her wine glass and turned to face me fully. "I lost someone very important to me several years ago. I haven't been interested in getting close to anyone since then." "Haven't been? Or haven't allowed yourself to be?" "Same thing." "Is it?" She studied my face like she was memorizing it. "You're dangerous, Clara Gonzalez." "How am I dangerous?" "Because you make me want things I thought I'd given up on." The admission hung between us, honest and raw. I reached out and touched her hand, marveling at how soft her skin was despite the calluses from her work. "What kind of things?" Instead of answering, she leaned forward and kissed me. It was gentle at first, tentative, like she was asking permission, but when I kissed her back, something ignited. Her hand slid into my hair, and she pulled me closer, deeper into the kiss. She tasted like wine and promises, and I felt something inside me unfold like fabric being smoothed by expert hands. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. Her blue eyes were dark with want, and I knew mine probably looked the same. "This complicates things," she whispered, her forehead resting against mine. "Does it have to?" "I'm old enough to be your mother." "You're not my mother." And I'm old enough to make my own choices about who I want. What is it you want, Clara? I looked at this beautiful, complicated woman who had somehow become the center of my universe in just a few weeks, and told her the truth. I want you. The kiss changed everything between us, but we spent the next week pretending it hadn't. Evelyn threw herself into her work with newfound intensity, and I buried myself in the Morrison account details. Neither of us mentioned what had happened on her leather sofa, but the memory hung between us like expensive silk waiting to be cut. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. On a rainy Thursday evening, I showed up at her shop with 2 coffee cups from the European cafe downtown. She was bent over her cutting table, working on what looked like a wedding dress. "Peace offering," I said, setting down her cappuccino. She looked up, her hair escaping from its usual perfect chignon. For what? For making things complicated. She straightened, pushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "You didn't make anything complicated, Clara. Life is complicated. Feelings are complicated. Are we going to talk about it? About what happened between us?" She moved around the table, closer to me. "Or about what's been happening between us since we met?" "Both." She picked up her coffee, inhaling the steam like it could give her courage. "I haven't been with anyone since Rebecca died. 4 years, Clara. 4 years of telling myself I was fine alone." "Rebecca was your partner?" "For 12 years. Her voice got soft, distant. "She had a heart attack at 49. Perfectly healthy one day, gone the next." I felt something twist in my chest. "I'm sorry." I thought I was done with all of this. The vulnerability, the risk, the possibility of losing someone again. She looked directly at me. "Then you walked into my shop with your impossible deadline and your stubborn determination, and suddenly I'm thinking about things I swore I'd given up." "Like what?" "Like how your eyes light up when you laugh. Like how you bite your lip when you're concentrating. Like how it felt when you kissed me back." The rain drummed against her windows, creating a cocoon of intimacy around us. I stepped closer, close enough to see the flecks of silver in her blue eyes. "Evelyn, I don't know what I'm doing here. I've never felt this way about a woman before." "Never?" I shook my head. "I mean, I've wondered sometimes, but it was always theoretical. Until you." Something shifted in her expression, surprise mixing with tenderness. "And now?" "Now I can't stop thinking about you. About the way your hands moved when you were working on my suit. About how safe I felt when you were standing behind me in the mirror." She set down her coffee and reached for my face, her thumbs brushing across my cheekbones. "You realize this could be a disaster. It could be. Or it could be the best thing that's ever happened to either of us. You're optimistic. I'm terrified. But I'm more terrified of walking away and spending the rest of my life wondering what if." She studied my face for a long moment, like she was reading something written there. Then she leaned forward and kissed me again, deeper this time, with less hesitation and more hunger. I melted into her, my hands finding the soft wool of her sweater, pulling her closer. She tasted like coffee and promise, and when her tongue touched mine, I made a sound that was half gasp, half surrender. We broke apart only when breathing became necessary. Her pupils were dilated, and I could see her pulse racing at the base of her throat. "Have dinner with me," I whispered against her lips. "Clara." "Not here, not in your shop where we can pretend this is about business. A real date, somewhere public where we have to acknowledge what this is." She was quiet for so long I thought she might say no. Then she smiled, and it was like watching the sun come out after days of rain. "There's a jazz club on Virginia Street, small, intimate. They serve wine that costs more than most people's rent." "Perfect. Saturday night?" "It's a date." The words hung between us, official and terrifying and wonderful. 2 nights later, I stood outside the Blue Moon Jazz Club in a dress I'd changed out of 3 times. Black, simple, but cut to show just enough skin to be interesting. I'd spent an hour on my makeup, and another 20 minutes talking myself out of canceling. When I saw Evelyn waiting by the entrance, every nervous thought evaporated. She wore a midnight blue dress that hugged her curves in all the right places, her hair loose around her shoulders for the first time since I'd known her. She looked stunning and sophisticated, and absolutely nothing like any woman I'd ever dated. "You look beautiful," she said when I reached her. "So do you." Inside, the club was all dim lighting and intimate tables, with a three-piece jazz trio playing something sultry on a small stage. Evelyn had reserved a corner table where we could talk without shouting over the music. "Tell me about Rebecca," I said, after we'd ordered wine. Surprise flickered across her face. "Most people avoid that topic." "I'm not most people. And if I'm going to fall for you, I want to know all of you." "Fall for me?" Her voice was soft, amused. "I think it's already too late to pretend otherwise." She was quiet for a moment, turning her wine glass in her hands. Rebecca was a photographer. She had this ability to see beauty in the most ordinary things. She taught me that falling in love doesn't follow a schedule, and that age is just a number when you find the right person. "She sounds wonderful." She was. She would have liked you. "How do you know?" "Because she always said life was too short for safe choices. And you, Clara Gonzalez, are definitely not a safe choice." Later, when we were both wine-soft and the jazz trio had switched to something slow and romantic, she reached across the table and took my hand. "Dance with me," she said. On the small dance floor, she pulled me close, one hand on my waist, the other holding mine against her chest. I could feel her heartbeat, steady and strong, and smell her perfume mixing with the faint scent of wine on her breath. "This is crazy," I murmured against her neck. "Completely insane," she agreed, her lips brushing my ear. When the song ended, we walked to her car in comfortable silence. In the dim parking lot, she pressed me against the passenger door and kissed me with 4 weeks of pent-up longing. I kissed her back just as desperately, my hands tangling in her hair, pulling her closer until there was no space left between us. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. "Your place or mine?" she whispered. Before I could answer her question, my phone buzzed with a text that shattered the moment like breaking glass. Madeline's name flashed on the screen with 3 exclamation points that meant either someone had died or she needed a favor. "Emergency wedding crisis. Call me now." "I'm sorry," I told Evelyn, whose lips were still inches from mine. "It's my best friend. She's getting married next weekend." Evelyn stepped back, giving me space but keeping her hands on my waist. "Take it." Madeline's voice hit me like a hurricane the moment I answered. "Clara, I'm having a complete meltdown. My cousin Jessica just called off her engagement, which means she won't be bringing her fiancé to the wedding, which means my great-aunt Margaret is going to spend the entire reception trying to set me up with every unmarried man over 30. Breathe, Maddie. She's already texted me photos of 3 different guys. One has a mullet, Clara. A mullet in 2024. I looked at Evelyn, who was listening with amused interest. "What do you need me to do?" "Be my girlfriend." "What?" "Fake girlfriend, just for the weekend." "Please, Clara, I'm desperate." "She won't try to matchmake if she thinks I'm already spoken for. You know how she gets at family events?" I remembered Aunt Margaret from Madeline's birthday party last year. The woman had introduced her to 4 different men in 2 hours, including her divorced podiatrist and a guy who collected vintage lunchboxes. "Maddie, I can't just show up with a fake girlfriend. People will ask questions. So we'll answer them. We've been friends since college. No one would be surprised if we finally got together. Please, Clara, I'll owe you forever." I glanced at Evelyn again, whose eyebrows had climbed toward her hairline with curious amusement. "Can I call you back in 5 minutes?" 5 minutes, or I'm eloping to Vegas." I hung up and found Evelyn studying me with that knowing look she wore when she was figuring out a particularly challenging alteration. "Fake girlfriend duty?" she asked. "My friend is getting married next weekend at Lake Tahoe. Her family has decided she needs a husband immediately, and they're planning to use the wedding as a matchmaking convention. And you're the decoy girlfriend to save her from unwanted suitors." Apparently, Evelyn was quiet for a moment, and I could practically see the wheels turning in her head. "What if you didn't go alone?" "What do you mean?" "What if you brought a real girlfriend instead of pretending to be one?" My heart stopped for about 3 seconds. "Evelyn, think about it. You need a date for a wedding. I happen to be available this weekend, and we wouldn't have to pretend anything except that we're more established than we actually are. You do that? Clara, we just spent the evening talking about falling for each other. This seems like a logical next step. I thought about a weekend away with Evelyn. Hotel rooms and wedding receptions and intimate moments without the safety net of familiar surroundings. It felt like jumping out of an airplane without checking if the parachute worked. It's a lot of pressure. Meeting my friends, dealing with curious relatives, sharing a hotel room. Are you worried I'll embarrass you? I'm worried I'll embarrass myself. This is all new to me, Evelyn. The feelings, the relationship, all of it. What if I'm terrible at being someone's girlfriend? She stepped closer, framing my face with her hands. What if you're wonderful at it? What if we both are? The logical part of my brain listed all the reasons this was a terrible idea. We'd known each other for barely a month. We'd had exactly one official date. Taking things public at a wedding felt like announcing our relationship status on a billboard. But the part of my brain that had been making increasingly bad decisions where Evelyn was concerned thought it sounded perfect. The wedding is at the Edgewood Tahoe. Very upscale, very traditional. Madeline's family has money and they notice everything. I've been to my share of society weddings. I know how to play the part. And you're sure you want to spend a weekend pretending to be my girlfriend? Her smile was warm and slightly wicked. Who says it would be pretending? I called Madeline back with my counter-proposal. You're bringing someone? Her voice went up an octave. Who? Is it that guy from your office? The one with the nice arms? Not a guy. Silence. Then, Clara Gonzalez. Are you telling me you have a girlfriend and you didn't mention it? It's complicated. How complicated? I looked at Evelyn, who was leaning against her car with her arms crossed, looking like every romantic fantasy I'd never allowed myself to have. The good kind of complicated. Is she gorgeous? Stupidly gorgeous. Can she handle Aunt Margaret? I thought about the way Evelyn had commanded her shop, the quiet authority she carried, the way she'd made me feel safe and desired all at once. She can handle anything. Then bring her. But Clara, if this goes badly, I'm blaming you for my relationship with the mullet guy. An hour later, Evelyn and I sat on her sofa with a bottle of wine and a weekend that suddenly felt loaded with possibility and peril in equal measure. What exactly are we walking into? She asked. A weekend where we'll have to convince a bunch of strangers that we're madly in love. And are we? The question hung in the air like a challenge. We'd been dancing around it all evening, but now it was there, honest and terrifying and unavoidable. Ask me again on Sunday, I said. She leaned over and kissed me, soft and sweet and full of promise. I'm looking forward to finding out. The Edgewood Tahoe rose from the shoreline like something out of a fairy tale, all stone and timber against the backdrop of snow-capped mountains. I gripped the steering wheel tighter as we pulled into the circular drive, my palms sweating despite the air conditioning. Breathe, Evelyn said from the passenger seat, her hand finding mine on the console. It's just a wedding. A wedding where I'm about to introduce you as my girlfriend to people who've known me since college. And they're going to ask questions. Lots of questions. About how we met, how long we've been together, whether we're serious. Evelyn's smile was wickedly amused. What's the official story? We met through work. We've been seeing each other for a few months, and we're taking things slow but hopeful. All technically true. Technically. The valet took our keys, and suddenly, we were standing in the marble lobby with our weekend bags, about to cross a line we couldn't uncross. Evelyn looked stunning in her travel dress, navy blue with subtle silver threads that caught the light when she moved. Clara? Madeline's voice carried across the lobby like a siren. She appeared in a cloud of expensive perfume and pre-wedding anxiety, her dark hair swept up in an elaborate style that probably cost more than my monthly rent. You made it, and you must be the mysterious girlfriend. Evelyn Russell. Evelyn extended her hand with perfect poise. Congratulations on your wedding. Madeline shook her hand while studying her with the intensity of a jeweler examining a diamond. Thank you. Clara's told me so much about you. Has she? Evelyn's eyes met mine over Madeline's head, sparkling with mischief. Well, not nearly enough, actually, but we'll have all weekend to fix that. The hotel had given us a suite overlooking the lake, with a king bed that suddenly seemed to dominate the entire room. We stood in the doorway for a moment, both pretending not to notice the obvious sleeping arrangement issue. "I can take the couch," I offered. "Don't be ridiculous. We're adults, Clara. We can share a bed without it meaning anything." But when she said it, something in her voice suggested it might mean everything. We unpacked in carefully polite silence, hanging our dresses for tomorrow's ceremony, and arranging our toiletries in the marble bathroom like we were negotiating international treaties. The intimacy of it felt overwhelming and natural all at once. The rehearsal dinner was held on the hotel's outdoor terrace, with twinkling lights strung between the trees and the lake shimmering in the distance. Evelyn navigated the crowd like she'd been born to it, charming Madeline's mother and deflecting questions from curious cousins with graceful expertise. "So how did you two really meet?" asked Jessica, Madeline's recently unengaged cousin, cornering us by the wine bar. "At an antique shop," Evelyn answered smoothly. "We both wanted the same piece. Love at first sight?" Evelyn's hand found the small of my back, a gesture so natural it felt like we'd been doing it for years. More like love at first touch. I nearly choked on my wine, but Jessica ate it up like expensive chocolate. "That's so romantic." Clara always said she wasn't the settling down type. "People change," Evelyn said, her blue eyes meeting mine. "Sometimes you meet someone who makes you want different things." Later, during the toasts, I watched Evelyn laugh at the best man's terrible jokes and offer her handkerchief when the maid of honor started crying during her speech. She fit into this world effortlessly, like expensive silk draped over a perfect mannequin. "She's wonderful," Madeline whispered during a lull. "Where did you find her?" "She found me," I said, which felt more true than any lie we'd agreed on. The wedding ceremony took place on a lakeside terrace, with the mountains as a backdrop. I sat beside Evelyn in the third row, watching Madeline promise forever to a man she'd met 18 months ago, and wondering how some people could be so certain about love. "You're thinking too hard," Evelyn murmured, her lips close to my ear. "How do you know? You get this little line right here when you're overthinking." She touched the space between my eyebrows with one finger. "What's troubling you?" "How do people know? When it's right, when it's real, when it's worth risking everything for?" She was quiet for so long I thought she wouldn't answer. Then she took my hand, threading our fingers together. "Maybe they don't know. Maybe they just decide to believe." The reception moved inside as evening fell, with dinner and dancing in the hotel's grand ballroom. Evelyn looked breathtaking in her midnight blue evening gown, the one that turned her eyes the color of deep water, and made every man in the room do double takes. Not that she noticed. She only had eyes for me. "Dance with me," she said when the band started playing something slow and romantic. On the dance floor she pulled me close, one hand on my waist, the other holding mine against her chest. I could feel her heartbeat through the silk of her dress, steady and strong and reassuring. "Everyone's watching us," I whispered. "Let them watch." She spun me slowly, and I caught glimpses of familiar faces in the crowd. Madeline beaming at us from the head table, Jessica looking slightly envious, Aunt Margaret finally defeated in her matchmaking schemes. "You're a good dancer," I said. "Rebecca taught me. She said every woman should know how to lead and how to follow." The mention of her late partner should have felt awkward, but somehow it didn't. It felt like an invitation into something deeper, more honest. "Do you miss her?" "Every day. But tonight, for the first time in 4 years, I'm not missing her. I'm here with you, and that feels like something she would understand." When the song ended, we stayed on the dance floor, swaying gently to music that existed only between us. Her hands moved to frame my face, thumbs stroking across my cheekbones. "Clara." "Yeah? I think I'm falling in love with you." The words hit me like lightning, illuminating everything I'd been afraid to acknowledge. The way my pulse jumped whenever I saw her. The way I'd started planning my days around reasons to see her. The way being here with her felt more real than anything I'd experienced in years. "I think I'm already there," I whispered back. She kissed me then, right there on the dance floor with half of Madeline's wedding guests watching. It was soft and sweet and absolutely perfect, and when we broke apart, I could hear someone clapping. Back in our room later, we moved around each other with careful awareness. The evening had changed something between us, shifted us from pretending into something that felt dangerously close to real. "I'll just change in the bathroom," I said, grabbing my pajamas. When I emerged, Evelyn was sitting on the edge of the bed in a silk nightgown that probably cost more than my car payment. Her hair was loose around her shoulders, and she looked younger somehow, more vulnerable. "Clara, come here." I sat beside her, hyper-aware of the warmth radiating from her body, the subtle scent of her skin. "What happens when we go back to Reno?" she asked. "I don't know. Are you scared?" "Terrified, but not of you. Of this. Of how fast everything is changing. Of how much I want something I never even knew I was looking for." She turned to face me fully, her blue eyes serious. "What if we stopped pretending this is just for the weekend? What if we did?" Instead of answering with words, she kissed me. But this time it was different. Deeper, more urgent, full of weeks of unspoken desire. I kissed her back with everything I had, my hands tangling in her hair, pulling her closer until there was no space left between us. We fell back onto the bed together, a tangle of silk and skin, and breathless whispers. Her hands explored my body with reverent touches, as if she were memorizing every curve and hollow. When she whispered my name against my throat, it sounded like prayer. What happened next was tender and passionate and perfect, two bodies learning each other's rhythm in the soft glow of lamplight. She moved above me with graceful certainty, her eyes never leaving mine, and I felt something inside me break open and bloom. Afterward, we lay entwined, her head on my chest, listening to the sound of each other's breathing return to normal. "No more pretending," she whispered against my skin. "No more pretending," I agreed, meaning it completely. I woke to sunlight streaming through hotel curtains, and Evelyn's arm draped across my waist, like she'd been holding me all night. For exactly 15 seconds, everything felt perfect. Her breath was warm against my neck, her body soft and familiar against mine, and I could smell the lingering scent of her perfume on the pillows. Then reality crashed over me like ice water. What the hell had we done? Evelyn stirred beside me, her eyes fluttering open with the confused look of someone remembering where they were. When her gaze focused on me, I saw the exact moment the same realization hit her. Her arm tensed against my waist, and something shuddered behind her blue eyes. "Good morning," she said carefully. "Morning." We lay there for a moment in awkward silence, both pretending not to notice that we were naked under Egyptian cotton sheets in a hotel bed that smelled like sex and expensive soap. "We should probably get ready for brunch," she said finally. "Right. Brunch." She slipped out of bed with fluid grace, wrapping herself in the hotel robe like armor. I watched her disappear into the bathroom and heard the shower start running. The sound felt like a door closing between us. I stared at the ceiling and tried to make sense of what was happening in my chest. Last night had been incredible, mind-blowing, life-changing. So why did I feel like I was drowning? Because this was real now. Because what happened between us wasn't just weekend pretending anymore. Because I'd fallen completely, hopelessly in love with a woman who was still grieving her dead partner, and I had no idea what to do with that information. The goodbye brunch was torture. We sat with Madeline's family, making polite conversation about the beautiful ceremony, while my skin hummed with the memory of Evelyn's touches. She was perfectly composed, charming the aunts and complimenting the flower arrangements like nothing had changed. But I caught her watching me sometimes when she thought I wasn't looking, and there was something in her expression I couldn't read. Confusion, maybe. Or regret. "You two are so sweet together," Aunt Margaret gushed over mimosas. "When's the wedding?" Evelyn nearly choked on her orange juice. "Oh, we're taking things slow." "At your age, dear, how slow can you afford to take things?" The comment hit like a slap. I saw Evelyn's face go carefully blank, that professional mask she wore when clients made unreasonable demands. "We have all the time in the world," I said quickly, but the damage was done. The drive back to Reno was 3 hours of careful conversation about safe topics. The weather, the wedding flowers, the quality of the hotel service, anything except what had happened between us in that king-sized bed. "Clara," she said as we pulled into her driveway. "Yeah? I think we should talk about what happened." My stomach dropped. "Okay. But not tonight. I need some time to think, and I suspect you do too. I wanted to argue, to demand we hash this out immediately, but the exhaustion in her voice stopped me. She looked older somehow, worn down by something I couldn't name. Take all the time you need. She leaned over and kissed my cheek, soft and brief and heartbreaking. Thank you for this weekend, for helping Madeline, for being my partner in all of it. Partner, not girlfriend, not lover. Partner, like we were business associates who'd completed a successful project. I drove home in a haze of confusion and growing dread. My apartment felt too small and too quiet after the luxury of the hotel suite. I kept reaching for my phone to text her, then putting it down when I couldn't figure out what to say. 3 days passed without a word from her. I threw myself into work with manic intensity, but every meeting reminded me of the suit she'd altered for my Morrison presentation. Every coffee break made me think about that first evening in her shop when she'd kissed my temple. On Thursday, I cracked and drove to Timeless Alterations. The shop was closed, not just closed for the day, but closed with a handwritten sign that said family emergency. Closed indefinitely. My heart stopped. I called her number immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. Evelyn, it's Clara. I saw your shop was closed. Are you okay? Call me back, please. She didn't. I tried again Friday morning, then Friday afternoon. Nothing. By Saturday, I was imagining car accidents and hospital stays and all the terrible things that could happen to someone I loved when I had no legal right to information about their well-being. Finally, I called Sophie at the boutique. Oh, honey, Sophie said when I identified myself. Evelyn didn't tell you? Tell me what? She flew to Seattle on Tuesday. Her sister's having surgery, and she needed help with the kids for a few weeks. Relief flooded through me so fast I nearly fell over. She was safe. She wasn't lying in a hospital somewhere. She was just taking care of family. But then the other shoe dropped. Sophie, why wouldn't she tell me she was leaving? There was a pause that lasted too long. You'd have to ask her that yourself, dear. I tried calling again that night, and this time she answered on the third ring. Clara. Thank damn it, Evelyn. I've been worried sick. Sophie told me about your sister. Yes, Amanda needed help with the twins while she recovers from her hysterectomy. Her voice was carefully neutral, like she was talking to a telemarketer. How long will you be gone? I'm not sure. Probably a few weeks. A few weeks? What about your shop, your clients? I've referred my active projects to other tailors in town. The shop will survive. Something cold settled in my stomach. Evelyn, what's really going on here? Silence stretched between us for so long I thought she'd hung up. Clara, I think we made a mistake. The words hit me like a physical blow. What kind of mistake? This whole thing, getting involved. Last weekend was wonderful, but it wasn't real. It was just the romance of the wedding, the beautiful setting, the pretending. When I woke up Sunday morning, I realized we'd gotten caught up in something that doesn't make sense in the real world. It felt pretty real to me. You're 28 years old. You have your whole life ahead of you. Your career is taking off. You should be with someone your own age who can give you everything you deserve. Don't I get a say in what I deserve? Clara, please don't make this harder than it has to be. Harder than what has to be? Another long pause. I'm not coming back to Reno. The words sucked all the air out of my lungs. What? Amanda needs ongoing help, and Seattle has opportunities for my business. I'm thinking of relocating permanently. You're running away. I'm being practical. You're a coward. I heard her sharp intake of breath, but I was past caring about being polite. You're scared because what happened between us was real and good, and exactly what you said you'd given up on. So instead of fighting for it, you're running away to another state. Clara? No, let me finish. You told me people change, that sometimes you meet someone who makes you want different things. You said maybe love isn't about knowing, maybe it's about deciding to believe. Was that all bullshit? It wasn't bullshit, but wanting something and being brave enough to have it are different things. Then be brave, damn it. Be brave enough to let yourself be happy again. I can't. Her voice broke on the words. I can't lose someone else I love. I won't survive it a second time. The admission hung between us like a confession. She loved me. She was running away because she loved me and was terrified of what that meant. Evelyn, please come home. Come home and let's figure this out together. I'm sorry, Clara. I'm so sorry. The line went dead, and I was left holding a phone that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She was gone. The woman I'd fallen in love with was gone, and I had no idea how to get her back. For 2 weeks, I turned into someone I didn't recognize. I ate cereal for dinner and ignored calls from concerned friends. I drove past Timeless Alterations daily, staring at the closed sign like it might magically disappear. The shop looked abandoned, dust already gathering on the windows, and each day it felt more permanent. Work became my refuge. I threw myself into the Morrison account with obsessive intensity, staying late enough that the cleaning crew knew me by name. But every accomplishment felt hollow without someone to share it with, without blue eyes proud of my success. You look terrible, Madeline announced, appearing in my office with coffee and an expression that brooked no argument. We're talking, now. There's nothing to talk about. The woman you brought to my wedding, who looked at you like you hung the moon, is gone. There's definitely something to talk about. I told her everything. The antique shop, the late nights in Evelyn's shop, the way she'd made me feel like I was discovering myself for the first time. How she'd run away to Seattle because loving me scared her more than being alone. So go get her, Madeline said when I finished. She made her choice. She made a scared choice. There's a difference. Maddie, she lost the love of her life 4 years ago. She's terrified of going through that again. I can't compete with that kind of fear. You're not competing with fear. You're offering something better than fear. That night, I sat in my apartment with a bottle of wine and a laptop, Googling flights to Seattle. I got as far as entering my credit card information before closing the browser. What if I showed up and she still wanted nothing to do with me? What if I was just some young woman she'd experimented with during a moment of weakness? But then I remembered the way she'd looked at me on the dance floor, the reverence in her voice when she'd whispered my name. That hadn't been experimentation. That had been love, raw and terrifying and real. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to Henderson's antique shop. Marcus looked up from polishing a brass lamp, his face lighting up when he saw me. Clara, how's the romance business? Complicated. Marcus, do you still have that Victorian sewing box, the one Evelyn was looking at? The mahogany one with mother-of-pearl inlays? She came back and bought it the day after you two met. Said it was exactly what she'd been looking for. My heart did something complicated in my chest. She bought it? Expensive piece, but she didn't even haggle. Said sometimes you know something's meant to be yours. I stood there processing this information. She'd bought the sewing box the day after we met, when we were still strangers who'd barely touched fingers over a cameo brooch. What did that mean? Marcus, you've been in business a long time. You must see people fall in love over antiques occasionally. His weathered face creased into a knowing smile. More often than you'd think. There's something about old things, objects with history. They make people think about permanence, about what lasts. What if someone's too scared to believe in permanence? Then someone else has to be brave enough to show them it's possible. I spent the rest of the day researching vintage sewing machines, learning about brands and models and restoration techniques. If Evelyn thought she could hide from love by running to another state, I was going to show her that some things were worth chasing. The 1,922nd Singer Featherweight cost more than my monthly salary, but it was perfect. Restored to pristine condition, housed in its original bentwood case, with all the original attachments and manuals. According to the seller, it sewed like a dream and would last another 100 years with proper care. I had it shipped to Amanda Russell's address in Seattle with a note. Some things are built to last, including love. Clara. 3 days later, my phone rang at 11 p.m. Evelyn's name on the screen made my heart race. Clara. Her voice was soft, uncertain. Hi? The sewing machine is beautiful. I thought you might appreciate the craftsmanship. I can't accept it. It's too expensive. Too much. It's a gift. No strings attached. Silence stretched between us, filled with everything we weren't saying. Why? She finally asked. Because you taught me that some things are worth investing in. That quality craftsmanship deserves to be treasured, not hidden away in storage. We're not talking about sewing machines, are we? No, we're not. I heard her take a shaky breath. Clara, I'm scared. I know. What if this is a mistake? What if we're too different? What if something happens to you, and I have to go through losing someone again? What if we're perfect for each other? What if our differences make us stronger? What if we have 50 years together and die peacefully in our sleep at 90? You can't promise that. No, I can't. But I can promise that I love you and I'm not going anywhere, and I think we deserve a chance to find out what we could be together. Another long pause. I don't know how to do this, Clara. I don't know how to be someone's girlfriend again. Neither do I. I've never been anyone's girlfriend. We can figure it out together. What if I'm too set in my ways? Too old for you? What if you're exactly what I've been looking for without knowing it? I heard her crying softly, and my own eyes filled with tears. Amanda says I'm being an idiot, she whispered. Amanda sounds like a smart woman. She says Rebecca would be furious with me for throwing away a chance at happiness because I'm too afraid to live. What do you think Rebecca would say? She'd probably tell me that love doesn't follow a schedule, and running away from good things is the worst kind of cowardice. She sounds like she was a wise woman. She was. And she would have loved you. The admission broke something open in my chest. Evelyn, please come home. What if this is crazy? What if we're moving too fast? Then we'll slow down. We'll take it one day at a time, one conversation at a time, one kiss at a time. But please don't throw this away because you're scared. The silence that followed felt different somehow, less desperate and more thoughtful. I'll need a few days to arrange things here. Amanda's recovery is going well, but I can't just abandon her. Take all the time you need. I'll be here. Clara? Yeah? I love you too. The words hung between us like a bridge across impossible distance. I know, I whispered back. Come home, and we'll figure out the rest. Evelyn came home on a Thursday afternoon in October, when the Nevada sky was that particular shade of blue that made everything look like a postcard. I'd been checking my phone obsessively for 3 days, ever since she'd texted that her flight was booked. I was supposed to be in a client meeting, but I'd rescheduled everything to pace around my apartment like a caged animal. When I heard her car in the driveway, my heart nearly stopped. She stood on my doorstep with a single suitcase and the same uncertain expression she'd worn that first day in the antique shop. Her hair was shorter, sun-streaked from Seattle's autumn light, and she looked younger somehow, like the weeks away had lifted some invisible weight from her shoulders. Hi, she said simply. Hi yourself. We stood there for a moment, just looking at each other, relearning faces we'd memorized in darkness and hotel rooms, and heated moments that felt like a lifetime ago. Can I come in? She asked. I stepped aside, and she moved past me into my living space. She'd never been here before, I realized. All our time together had been in her shop, fancy restaurants, hotel rooms, anywhere but the messy reality of my actual life. She examined my bookshelves, my collection of vintage scarves draped over a reading chair, the framed photos from college and family vacations, taking inventory, maybe deciding if she could fit into this version of my world. I brought you something, she said, reaching into her purse. It was the cameo brooch from Henderson's shop, the one we'd both reached for that first day. The ivory carving caught the afternoon light streaming through my windows. I bought this the morning after we met, she said. I told myself it was because I admired the craftsmanship, but honestly, I bought it because it reminded me of you. Something classical and beautiful and worth treasuring. I took the brooch, our fingers brushing in that same electric way they had months ago. Evelyn. I've been thinking about what you said. About being brave enough to be happy. About not throwing away good things because I'm scared. And? She moved closer, close enough that I could smell her subtle perfume and see the flecks of silver in her blue eyes. And I decided I'd rather be terrified with you than safe without you. I kissed her then, pouring weeks of longing and relief and desperate love into the connection between us. She kissed me back with equal intensity, her hands fisting in my shirt like she was afraid I might disappear. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard. I missed you so much, I whispered against her lips. I missed you too, every day, every night, Every moment I wasn't thinking about Amanda or the twins or anything else. I was missing you. Are you really here? Are we really doing this? I'm here, and yes, we're really doing this. She framed my face with her hands. If you still want to. I want everything with you. The good days and the terrible days and all the ordinary days in between. 6 months later, I moved into the house behind timeless alterations. The Victorian cottage Evelyn had been restoring for years, but never quite finished. It had hardwood floors that creaked in all the right places, a kitchen with windows that looked out on her garden, and a bed big enough for 2 women who'd learned to sleep wrapped around each other. She taught me to sew on evenings when the shop was closed, her hands guiding mine on the vintage singer she'd brought back from Seattle. I was terrible at first, producing crooked seams and uneven hems that made her laugh until tears ran down her cheeks. Patience, she'd murmur, standing behind me to adjust my posture. The fabric will tell you what it wants to be. What if it wants to be a disaster? Then we'll start over. That's the beauty of good materials, Clara. You can always begin again. We did begin again, slowly and carefully, and with the kind of attention to detail Evelyn brought to her finest work. We learned each other's rhythms, negotiated closet space and coffee preferences, and the 1,000 small compromises that turned 2 separate lives into one shared story. I watched her teach Mrs. Patterson's granddaughter to embroider roses on a christening gown, her patience infinite as small fingers fumbled with delicate thread. I saw her cry over a wedding dress alteration when the bride mentioned her deceased mother, then compose herself and create something so beautiful it looked like love made tangible. She was magnificent in her craft and in her capacity for love, and somehow she'd chosen me. The night of Madeline's first anniversary party, I wore a dress Evelyn had designed and sewn specifically for me, midnight blue silk that moved like water when I walked, with subtle beading that caught the light. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever owned, and I felt like royalty wearing it. You look stunning, she said, zipping me up with reverent fingers. I feel stunning. Is that terrible of me? It's terrible if you don't feel stunning. I put a lot of work into making sure you would. At the party, I introduced her to colleagues and clients as my partner, Evelyn, and watched their faces as they registered not just that I was with a woman, but that I was with an absolutely captivating woman, who commanded respect and attention effortlessly. How long have you 2 been together? My boss asked during cocktails. Almost a year, Evelyn answered smoothly, her hand warm on my lower back. Any wedding plans? We looked at each other, and I saw the future reflected in her eyes. Not the careful, planned future I'd always imagined, but something organic and beautiful and surprising. We're taking it one day at a time, I said. But we're taking it together. Later that night, we made love in our bed, in our house, with moonlight streaming through windows we'd cleaned together that weekend. Her body was familiar now, mapped by months of exploration and tenderness, but it still felt like discovering treasure every time she whispered my name in the darkness. I love you, she said afterward, her head on my chest, fingers tracing lazy patterns on my skin. I love you too, always. Always is a long time, Clara. Not long enough? She lifted her head to look at me, her hair silver in the moonlight. What would 28-year-old Clara think of us now? She'd be amazed that she found someone who makes her want to plant a garden and learn to cook proper dinners and argue about thread colors. And 53-year-old Evelyn? I stroked her hair, soft as expensive silk between my fingers. She'd be proud that she was brave enough to let herself be happy again. Even though I'm terrified every day that something will happen to you? Even though. Because the alternative is missing all of this. She kissed me softly, and I tasted forever in her lips. Outside our window, Reno slept around us, full of people falling in and out of love, making and breaking promises, searching for someone to make their world feel complete. We'd found each other in an antique shop over objects that had survived decades, and maybe that was appropriate. Some things, I'd learned, are built to last, including love, when you're brave enough to believe in it.